And what I thought I would start is with just 5 minutes of meditation. And so what I thought we could do just 5 minutes of guided meditation with what is this? This question that's used in the Zen tradition. And so what I suggest is that everybody turns toward the film on that side. So if you all turn, if you find a relatively comfortable posture, and so you're going to start with the eyes open, the way watching the film. So in a way there is a vision, there is a contact, and then as you sit here, as you see the images, can you just ask what is it without looking for an answer, but just asking from inside yourself, looking at the pictures. And then you're going to actually half close the eyes and look just at the floor. Just gaze at the floor gently in front of you. And then continue with the question, what is this? If I half close my eyes, if I ask this question without looking for an answer, you know, what's the difference between looking at the picture? So you ask the question, what is this? And then you might become distracted by this or that, and then you come back to the question again, what is this? And then you try to expand your awareness, still looking down, gazing gently at the floor, about the room, about the people around you, about the sound. And you were asking, what is this? To open to the whole moment without defining anything within it. So this is the end of the meditation, and then you can turn back towards me. And so the way we set up the room is that the film is going to go on a loop, and on the side, and then I'm going to talk here, facing you. And again, you can play with looking at the film, listening to me, looking at me directly. What difference does it make? Because in a way, the what is this, the idea of this question, it's really not an intellectual inquiry. It's really actually a way to kind of move away from narrowing, defining, and in a way opening to whatever is going on with what we would call creative awareness, creative mindfulness. And so in a way, when you do the meditation, there is two aspects, you could say. One aspect is an anchoring aspect. And this is very interesting in terms of intimacy. Because if we notice, if we go off and we go into a thought about the past, about the future, actually we're not here. But when we come back, to the what is this, we actually come back to the whole room, to what is going on in a wider way. So in a way, I think personally, intimacy is connection. And how do we disconnect? And how do we connect? So in a way, the what is, in a way, it's kind of to try to anchor us in the multiplicity of what is going on. And then, of course, you have two choices. You can be just with the multiplicity of what's going on in an open way, or you can focus on one thing. And then, in a way, the intimacy will be different, because it will be narrowed down to a person, to an object, or it will be open to everything that arises. And then the questioning is actually the piece about unknowing. It's actually opening to uncertainty. So of course there are things we know, but there are a lot of things we don't know. And so in a way, being comfortable with that. And so when we do this meditation, the point is not to look for an answer, but actually the point is to develop a sensation of questioning in the whole body and mind, which actually helps you, I would nearly say, to be more intimate with what is around us. Because in a way, if we are lost in abstraction, sometimes you can really go on automatic, and you might not see a friend, or you might not see something which is happening, because you are not actually here. So one of the things about this method, questioning, is actually to really be here in a wide open way, but also in a questioning way, opening to the element which constitute this experience. Then I wanted to mention a poem by Dogen, which is a Japanese Zen master from the Soto Zen tradition. And in it, he says, the way of the Buddha is to know the self. To know the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. So what can be interesting in terms of our experience is when you see somebody, in a way, when you see somebody or when you see something, do you see it? Or do you see it and then you bring your definition of it, your idea about that person? And so, in a way, you might feel, oh, I have intimacy because I think I know how this person works. But actually, unless you ask the person, you don't know. Once I had trouble with somebody in a community, and I thought, oh, she does not like me. And then finally, one day we talked about it and said, you are just like my sister. And I thought, okay, if I am just like her sister, there is nothing I can do. And so I could be intimate with her in a very different way. Because I did not make it into something about myself. I could see it was different conditions coming together. So in a way, the idea is that to actually, what does it mean to know the self? It's actually not so much to define it, but to me what is the beauty of this practice and other practices to actually realize there are so many different aspects of ourselves. So we can be intimate in so many different ways. Because often we are when we think of intimacy, we often reduce what intimacy can be, but what it means to be intimate with the world, with the experience around us. And so in a way to see that when we study the self, we're actually studying the conditions that form the self. And what we realize that there are lots of conditions that form the self. And if you ask yourself, what does my life depend upon? My life depends upon the air I breathe, the water I drink, the food I take, the clothes I wear, the house I live in, the medicine I might need. So in a way, it all comes from outside of myself. So in a way, the practice is to actually become intimate, because it's also our way to survive, to see that intimacy is given being with a human being, that at one level we are alone, because nobody can be us, and at another level our life depends on everything outside of us. So actually recognizing this intimacy through our existing. And so the idea is that in a way, if you know the self in this kind of multiple way, you realize that the self is actually quite amorphous, is actually quite unknowable. In some way you can know when you react in a certain automatic way. You say, oh, I always do this. But you don't always do it. Upon certain condition, you might. So we have a tendency actually to fix ourselves, to define ourselves. And so in a way we don't allow ourselves to be more unknowing about ourselves. Could I change in some way? Could I do something in a different way? And if I did it in a different way, what would be that experience? So it's kind of like this disappearing of the self is looking at the changing nature of ourself, our thought, our feeling, our experience. It doesn't mean that we don't exist in a relatively continuous way. I mean, tomorrow I doubt you will become pink giraffe. But who knows, you could have a good time or bad time, or things could happen. But so there is a certain continuity, but within that, there can be lots of change. And so at that level, this meditation is helping us to be grounded in a knowing in a stable way. Because I think with the unknowing, it can also, uncertainty can destabilize us, can make us anxious. And so part of the meditation process is really to ground us, to stabilize us in a way. With, in a way, this way of coming back to the question, to the anchoring, what is this? And then touching again and again, this unknowing. And then the last sentence is, to forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. And so to me, what is very interesting in terms of intimacy is actually there is often less intimacy when you define more yourself, others. And there is more intimacy when you're really open to what is going on, to the people around us. Of course, we know that they have certain tendency, but actually they could surprise us. They could change. And one of the things that often there is this beautiful metaphor that in a way there is this orchid in the mountain with a fantastic perfume. And even if nobody smells it, it will still spread the perfume. Or you have this idea of the incense disappearing, so selflessness, at the same time that it gives perfume. But then the incense doesn't say, oh, I don't like this guy over there. I'm only going to go that way. It goes everywhere. So in this unknowing and intimacy, there is also that, how can I connect? How can I recognize alive? How can I meet the world around me? Because I think in a way we can be intimate also to ourselves. How we intimate to ourselves, how can we be unknown to ourselves, but in a positive, stable, open way? Or is it that it makes us anxious? And then the same with others. I think that through the meditation process or the ways, I think art, in a way, is interesting, because you go to a gallery and you see something, and so you can come to it in many different ways. So my brother-in-law is an artist, my sister-in-law is a curator, and so they will approach the work in such a different way to me, because they will meet, their intimacy will be very different from mine, because I will not look at the meaning, I will not look at the history, I will just look at the shape. So in a way, when there is intimacy, when there is connection, there is a whole range of nearness, and also there is a whole range of history behind it. And so in a way, when I go with my brother-in-law in a museum and we look at some paintings, suddenly I become intimate with the painting in a very different way. Because he's going to explain to me the different elements, and then the different history, and then you see the whole connection. That here I see a painting, and I could say, oh, I like it, I don't like it. Or I can see the whole flow of condition which created this painting. So there can be intimacy in many different ways. And in a way, how can we be with unknowing? Because in a way, as an artist, in one way, you have done study, you need to have a certain amount of knowledge, you need to have a certain amount of expertise. And at the same time, you have your own power of creativity within you. And sometimes you might know what you want to do, but sometimes you don't know. And so, how is it when you know something, you go in a certain direction, you know what's going on, and when is it when actually you don't know? And suddenly something comes up. And so I think sometimes there is all kind of idea about how art should be produced. But I think in a way there is a whole range. And within that, there is also the intimacy between the people and the work, the artist and the work, and the society and the work. That's also interesting, because intimacy can be with one person or can be with society. How do we meet society? How do we meet the world around us, the nature around us? And then the anchoring of the what is this is interesting. I would suggest if you go for a walk, and then you look around you, and you go for a walk to breathe, the fresh air or whatever, and try to be aware of what is around you. And if you think about something else, things will be opaque. But then if you say, what is this? And you're really open to a color, you're really open to a shape, then actually you see it in a more intimate way. And so it's kind of like, how much screens are there between us and what we mean? And how can we be intimate? Okay, that's what I wanted to say for now. And then I wanted to open it to questions or comments.
Martine, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
From what I gather from following you on Facebook, is that you have a photographic practice. Maybe could you talk a little bit about the connection back to what is this and the images that you take, and maybe to the video as well?
Yeah, so in a way I like to take photos, and I'm really not trained at all, so it's a little kind of working with the camera. Also, I'm interested in not necessarily pretty pictures, sometimes yes, but not necessarily, and macro. And the theme, you might have seen one of the themes in the film was the little crabs. That actually was in Australia. And I just love those little crabs, and kind of, to me, it kind of shows something. But intimacy, they all move together, and unknowing because you don't know what they're moving for. It's kind of fascinating. But my idea, in a way, in terms of photographic and how I share it, because now I share it on Instagram and Facebook, but more on Instagram. But I found interesting with Instagram is that I am followed by a certain of people, and I follow a certain amount. And what I found is that we inspire each other. That I kind of like, there is my own idea about what I want to take, how I want to take it. I like to do a lot of macro thing. But also when I see somebody doing something, I think, ooh, kind of like I respond to what they create. And that sparks something creative within me too. So I like to take the picture myself, and then of course there is kind of like the result, if it does what you want it to do or not, or sometimes you take a picture and you're surprised by what the lens does. To me, that I have a new camera, and sometimes the lens does kind of really improve the photo. It's kind of weird. And in a way, it's kind of like being intimate, kind of looking at, noticing things, noticing elements which might not be necessarily beautiful, but would kind of catch me in terms of light, in terms of shape, in terms of angle. So that's why the photography is also a way to be creative and to be intimate with what I photograph, because I'm connecting to it.
Does anybody have any questions? And if you do, if you could speak a bit louder so Martine can hear from the computer.
I'm behind the camera, so you won't be able to see me, Martine, but is there a difference in the question of what is this between the photograph that you take or seeing the material with your own eyes? Does that the question of what is this change then in that respect between image and material?
It's true, because you see, I think what is this brings curiosity. So in a way, I mean, one of the challenge with Instagram is that, and with Facebook, but mainly with Instagram, is how many likes you get. So what to me is also interesting is that some photo I really like, I don't get many likes, and some photo I think, then I get many likes. And then what is interesting here is, what is this? There is me seeing something, then there is seeing the result of it, which match what I was trying to do or not, improve it, not improve it. And then there is kind of the intimacy that you have nowadays with Instagram, for example, with if people like it or not, if people have your sensibility or not. So that's very interesting. So to kind of, I love it when I take something and it comes out and I'm like, I have no idea that it would come out that way. I love it. I must say, due to this practice of what is this, I really, in a way, like to be surprised. So then when it's kind of surprising like that, or when it does something like, when you hope, and I think possibly as artists, you might think of that, sometimes you have this kind of, I want to take this kind of picture, and you hope, that one day you'll take that kind of picture. But it's very hard to take the kind of picture you want to take. And recently I had that experience that I've wanted for a long time to take a picture of drops on a spider web. And this is extremely difficult. And finally I did it, and I had no idea if it would come out. And when it came out, it was not just the fact, I did it. It was more the fact, God, this is amazing. This is so beautiful to see this in that way, that if you had not seen it through the macro, you would not see it that way. To me, that's also, we kind of bring a certain life, a certain kind of, again, surprise to what is there that we cannot see with our ordinary eye, but that the camera, especially with the macro, can do.
What I thought was very interesting, Martine, is when you talked about the orchid in the forest and the scent being present regardless of whether we are there or not. It made me think of this phenomenologist called Alfonso Lingus, who describes a similar, the experience of an orchid in a forest, and then connects that to trust and to courage. And I was wondering if this is also connected to what is this, in a way that it is trusting in the unknowing or in the uncertainty.
There is an idea in the Zen Son tradition where you're supposed to cultivate the three qualities: the quality of great faith and confidence, the quality of great courage, and the quality of great questioning. And so what is interesting here is that you have great faith, which is actually great faith in your own experience, that you have experienced yourself, that you're capable of doing art, or capable of being compassionate, or capable of being wise, or being intimate, or being... So in a way, it's kind of like this great faith. Oh, I can do this. I have experienced this. And then that gives you a ground. But then you need to have the courage to move, to act, to have the energy to do something. You cannot just have the confidence. You need to kind of move from the confidence. But then within that, you have the questioning. And so the questioning, because you see, the thing with questioning, the questioning could lead to doubt, but it could lead to negative doubt. I can't do this, I'm not able to do this is, etc., etc. Should I do this? Should I not do this? What about this? What will other people think? Or whatever it might be. And with this questioning, it's really a creative question. To actually ground it from the confidence, it gives openness. So there is this unknowing, there is this openness to what will happen. But also having the trust to move, to act. And that's what the three are in a way kind of helping each other.
Can those three working together also be applied to politics?
In what way?
In the way of not predetermining politics, but also having a way of moving forward with what you and your community might want, but at the same time, paradoxically, not assuming what they want.
Yeah, this I think often, this is when I talk about definition, is that, or abstraction. People decide this is the way to go, this is the best idea, this is the way it's going to work. Let it be in politics, economics, etc., etc. This is what's going to be beneficial for you, whatever it is. And then you start from an idea, and then you want to feed people into that. And that often doesn't work. I mean, that's what we've realized recently with economics and certain political idea. And so in a way, I think to me what is very interesting is grassroots movement, which look at, can we have a different type of economy? Can we have a different type of politics? But then it's kind of like you're really unknown, because generally people, that's what I found interesting with the Occupy movement. Everybody wanted them to affirm something, when actually they wanted to work on the process. And in Thailand, in Southeast Asia, you have a group of Buddhists who are engaged Buddhists. And what they're trying to do is actually look at what is on the ground. What do the people need on the ground in terms of ecology, in terms of different things? And can we, instead of telling them this is what you need to do, can we kind of from the bottom up see, okay, what are the conditions? What are the different strengths of the people? What are the interests? Can we in a way create something together? Where in a way you have intimacy and unknowing, but in a way you have the trust, the courage, and you move. And so there was this article describing all kind of little eco thing which was happening in Burma. that we don't hear about, but it's really at the grassroots level. So I think it's kind of, in a way, one of the things about intimacy is how can we work together in groups? To me, this is one of the big questions nowadays. How can we work in groups? How can we have a sense of ourselves, but within the group? So there is always something between the sense of self, myself, my idea, my desire, my hope, and also if I come together with other people, we can share, of course, hopes and etc. But how much can I open myself to others? And how much do I want to stay within my own self? So this is kind of like a dance between the self and others, and how people can work together in terms of politics, economics, or art.
Sure, maybe I'm closer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah?
I really like your ideas about meditation and the awareness of yourself. And I was wondering, what is your position about free will? Like, because Schopenhauer said that you can do what you want, but you cannot want what you want. Do you understand me?
I think I cannot hear you very well if you moved a little. Sure. I thought I was going to hear you enough, but not really.
Okay, so I was wondering what is your position towards free will, because you explain so that you must be aware of yourself and that you are also you need to be open to other experience and the outside world. So what is your position towards life? Do you think that everything is determined, or more that you actually have a free will to do what you want to do?
Okay, so I think it's very important to see that the idea of free will in Anglo philosophy is a little different from the ancient idea of intention in Buddhism. So I cannot talk at length about intention and how it's seen, and free will and how it's seen, because I think we have actually two different ways of looking at free will and intention. But if I can say it briefly, personally, I think that meditation and the awareness that is developed through meditation is going to help us see what are the conditions that makes me. Also, what are the conditions within myself which make me react in a certain automatic way. Also, there is a fact that things happen to me, totally independent of me, like having a cold is a little independent of me. 3 days ago, I did not have it, now I have it. So, I think personally there is a certain amount of free will, but I think there is limit to the action and the effect of that free will. In terms of we alone with others, we sharing the world with others. So of course, up to a point, I mean, with art, you can see you have certain idea and you are going to do this, and sometimes it works the way you want it. And so you feel, oh, my free will really acted upon this piece of work. It ended up to be what I wanted. And other time you might say, and it might not work for diverse reasons. So personally, I would not say it's all in the mind. No, not at all. But I think, in a way, we are a flow of conditions. This being is a flow of conditions meeting the outer environment. And in the two meeting together, you have certain unknowable and certain knowable. And then you have happenstance. So I think there is a certain amount of free will, and at the same time, if we keep doing the same thing, we might keep doing kind of being an automatic thing, which then will be hard to get out of. But it doesn't mean we cannot get out of it. But then the question is, are the conditions going to help me, support me, so that I can act with my free will? Or are the conditions such that I cannot? At the moment we are lucky, relatively so in Europe, that at the moment there is no war. So in a way, we have a lot of free will up to a point. And then there is, for example, in Syria, you have a war going on, or in other country, and the people who are getting the bomb, they have very little free will of acting, because their circumstances make it so. It doesn't mean they don't have some amount of free will, but due to the condition, they have less operative power on their circumstances. So personally, I would see it as either or.
Okay, thank you.
What is your cat's name?
The cat's name is Zoe.
Oh, nice to meet you, Zoe.
I'm curious, maybe.
I think you have to come up to the front. Sorry to say.
Yeah, I was just curious. One thing I thought about when you're talking about like the here and now or something, I thought that first of all, it made me really relaxed to listen to you actually and to look at your images. But I think that to enjoy or like to be somewhere and you always have a lot of like counter actions against, like acting against you in a way that kind of, and one of them is like work maybe, and yeah, I think like everybody in this room is like between maybe 25 and 35, and I think there's some very specific moments where like people are trying to do something out of, and I was wondering basically what you do with your time actually at the moment, and maybe also would be interested in hearing your experience of maybe the solitude of, because I heard you were you lived in a monastery or in a, yeah, that's it.
Okay, so what do I do? It really depends. When I am at home, I am at home, and my mother, who is 90, lives downstairs. So since I am 60, I'm 63 now. So in Korea, they have this idea that after 60, it's free time. It's on top. Normally, they used to die at 60. So after that, it was bonus. So for me, this is like bonus at the moment. So I kind of a little bit stopped writing books, because I was writing books and things of that nature, because I think it's more important in a way to take care of my mother, who is losing her memory. So one of my practice is actually to take care of her, take her to do different things, and make sure she's as anxious-free as possible, because then she's in a better state. So that's part of my job, is to go down, check on her, and help her, eat with her. And recently I'm playing Scrabble in French with her. That's one of my activities in the evening. Then, of course, I have to do a lot of correspondence, because I organize retreat, I teach, etc. And also, I am involved with this big research project of teaching meditation to seniors. So I have lots of Skype meetings about this. Are we going to do it? What's going to happen? And things of that nature. That's one of the advantages with Skype now. You can, from your home, do all kinds of things. And then, if suddenly I see a good light, then I will go out. And then I will go and take pictures as part of my creativity. Or if it's sunny, but it's rare at the moment, I might go and work in the garden. So that's a little bit what I do. Different things, leading a very normal life actually in one way, and a little different in another way. And then when I was a nun for 10 years in Korea. And so in Korea, they have a very good method of sitting 10 hours a day, 6 months of the year. I mean, not 10 hours non-stop, but you sit, you walk, you sit, you walk 10 or 12 times in the day for 3 months at a time, and then a break, then again 3 months. And it was great. But you see, the thing about Korea is that it's actually not solitude, because they live very in community. It's very communal. So generally you sit with other people, and you're alone in your city, but you generally live a very communal life. And it's true that myself, we had a little room for the foreign ladies, and then once everybody left and I was on my own, and I must say I enjoyed it immensely. But what was interesting is that for the first 2 weeks, I thought, finally, nobody is here. I will be able to really meditate well, because it's because of them I cannot meditate well. And then after 2 weeks, I realized that was nothing to do with them and everything to do with me. But it was great you see, when you get into the rhythm of the meditation, it's not special, it's just what you do. Because in a way you have the faith, the confidence, that's what you want to do. And also because by practicing intensely, you do have, there is no doubt, you do have result. Within 6 months I had some result, and I thought, oh, this is working. Because when I decided to become a nun, I only was going to do it for a year and a half. But then it was so good, I stayed 10 years, which was very lucky for me. So solitude, I must say, in a Korean monastery, you don't have so much solitude, apart from when you sit. And then what is interesting is that you sit all these long hours. And so, of course, you try to ask, what is this? But you think about something else. And then one of the things I used to think about was I used to daydream about going to a hermitage, practicing hard, becoming awakened, and saving everybody. I used to have a wonderful daydream about that. Until I realized I was not meditating. I was daydreaming about it. So that was an interesting experience.
I think we have time for one or two more questions, if anybody feels inclined. Can you?
Maybe a quick question about. You say you're using Skype a lot for these interactions with your meditation groups or for talks like this, and I wondered how you think about the effect of this mode of communication on these ideas of intimacy and togetherness. Like when we're concentrating on the what is it and the space, the fact that we're kind of at once in this place with the bodies that surround us, in which is like a working space that we're familiar with, and at the same time a very intimate space, a bedroom that you're in, which we're physically not manifested in, and that our interaction, our like gaze towards your face as it's projected on the wall, isn't in the same direction as the camera, which you would perceive as to be looking at you. So there's like a strange splitting of intimacy, which is maybe a little like that daydreaming. Just wondered.
Yeah, at one level you're right. At one level you have these strange, nowadays you have these strange things where we can kind of be together in this way. And so in a way we're creating, I feel, a different kind of intimacy. Because generally, when you are with a group, in a way you have the body dimension. Your body in the room, their body in the room, we are all, in a way, in the same room. And that creates a certain dynamic. But my experience working with people with Skype like this, especially if you can see the people, if you cannot see them because it doesn't work well, then it's a little more difficult. But when we can see each other, I think it's an interesting kind of way of relating. because in a way you are relating in the ether, you know? And so we are together, and of course we're not together, but I have seen you, which if I had not done this in this way, I would have never seen you. So in a way, this creates a certain intimacy of actually seeing you as a human being. And then all the other people are this person, that person. So I see them as different bodies. And I am in the same space as them in a way. And so I recognize you, I see your humanity. And then you have the intimacy, and also you have more unknowing, because there is a little less data, you could say, in terms of seeing each other. But personally, I'm really quite keen on this. I mean, of course, it's nice to be with people, but I'm also keen on this way because I think it can break the fact that people feel isolated. And that, you know, you need to go to a special retreat, you need to spend lots of money, or to make it really special. Well, here you can meet me in my house, you in this working space, and we are together, and we share something together. And I think, personally, I think it's interesting because you can work with group you don't know, so it's just, in a way, a little happenstance, like this group. Or I work with group regularly. And so there, because we get to know each other, and sometimes I also meet them in person, then in a way you have more intimacy. So I think it depends also if you meet at times or not, the degree of intimacy.
Well, Martine, I think this is a nice moment to end. Hello, here I am. Thank you so much for connecting with us through the ether. And I hope that you feel better quickly. And yeah, I think you can, Thank you.